Hey folks, and welcome to another Sasori SpikeBoarding tutorial. Today we are going to go over how slow can you go. Yes, absolutely, how slow can you go? Because before we can go fast, we actually need to do everything perfectly in Kubi Cross and stand-up spike, going slowly and also drifting our feet. So how slow can you go really works. Wrist guards always work as well. Make sure you always put your wrist guards on and your helmet. And now our little word from our sponsors.
Sasori, become the motor. Pro-designed ink wrist guards, always wear them. Blizz eyewear, design, flexibility, and value.
Folks, how slow can you go is so vitally important. So sit down and become the SpikeBoarding student now. Sit back and watch this many times and take confidence in the fact that when you can begin to execute all of your stand-up spike and Kubi Cross strokes very slowly on simple little asphalt paths like this, it's going to help quite a bit. So what we're doing here is we are drifting, and notice how the Sasori skateboard, which is optimized for spike boarding, that's why we call it a spike board, it has very big drops. Notice how we're drifting from forward to backward seamlessly, and you want to be able to begin to do that with both legs, left and right. There should be no front or back or pardon me excuse me, dominant, no dominant. Everything should feel equally in control, and the more you do these how slow can you go drills, the better you will be able to do that. And also notice how we're walking more than kicking actually, and when we get to this kind of turbulence in the pavement, we just drift right over it, and you can see those drops work extremely well to capture the board front and back. Now we're going to begin to do a little descent. Notice how we're constantly keeping the arm in momentum. We're keeping our elbows high, and we're keeping the cadence constant when we have that skateboard spike spiked into the pavement. And now we've got a couple of friendly folks here, a little cigarette smoker walking his dog, asking about spikeboarding, and sadly we weren't able to stop and speak with him as we're sitting here filming. He's very inquisitive, and hopefully he'll come back and find us at SpikeBoarding.com, and he'll be watching these tutorials, and he'll quit smoking soon. So as you can see, the skateboard spike is plenty in control, even though we are this close to people. So, and here the little kid wants to have a little fun with us, and we go right around him with a little agility skill that we just kick the board over a little bit, and constantly synchronizing the spike thrust into the pavement with the feet. So that's what you want to also begin to do. And there's a little more consternation, and we kick straight through it. Notice how we're walking more than skating. We're getting a tiny little glide, but we're able to toss the skateboard spike from hand to hand, and notice how that shaft is staying perfectly parallel with the board, and it's not slinging out to the side. It's got no business there whatsoever. Otherwise, we need to go into the safety one position. And if you don't know what safety one is, please go back and find the dry land drill for safety one on this channel. So now we're descending a little bit. We're really trying to focus on synchronizing the kick and there's a little glide, the kick and the spike, and notice how that shoulder on the spike side is dropping. So we're balancing over our center line, and here we're going to go uphill a little bit. Pardon the camera move there. We're dropping that shoulder, and at the same time we're adding a little bit of a drift. So uphills are great to practice your drifts on, and they're also very good to just really tiny baby step the synchronization of the spike and the leg kick. And you can also stop, and you can do these drifting drills and switching drills. Switch drifting is what we're doing there, switch drifting to the rear. So we're drifting and we're switching, and that will help you quite a bit. It's a little more consternation, and you just go straight over it. Here we're going to start to get into walking on those rails. When you want the board to turn, you want to step on that rail. You want to step on that rail hard, okay? Focus a great deal on that arm being at 90 degrees. You want to engage the core and the lat. Well, we've gone to a little tiny descent here. There's a little bit of a pitch, and we've also taken the skateboard spike and put it in a neutral position. The neutral position is parallel to the board, and it is holding the carbon fiber shaft in the middle where the skateboard spike is weightless. So you want to really practice that neutral carry because it'll help you go ahead and learn to glide on one leg while you neutral carry. So there's no brace for you, as you can see here. So it's a little more challenging, and there we are riding the rails a little bit, and we're going to show a little turnaround. That's how you turn the board around. You always want to keep the board pointed forward toward that X and stand behind your X when you are in stand-up spike. So do not stand in front of that X when you've got both feet on the deck, because you may spike your own front wheels. So stay on that X or behind it. It's a little more shifting right there and drifting in between front and back. You notice how we're overemphasizing that drop shoulder. So we're going to walk, skate, walk, skate, walk, skate until we can finally begin to glide and realize how parallel that board is, that skateboard spike. A skateboard spike is perfectly parallel to the board, and you want to do that whether you're in a neutral carry or whether you are holding at the silicone. Once you go to the silicone and you slide that skateboard spike into hand grip, and you can begin to start to spike and either give it a momentum spike or just synchronize it with your Kubi cross. There's a little more drifting, and we're going to start going downhill here, and we're going to show a little bit of riding the rails. Here's the drifting, switch drifting. So we're switch drifting on the ones. You can do it on the ones or you can do it on the twos. And now we picked up a little more speed. As you saw, we went straight over that consternation there and drifted right over it. And here we're showing you how to ride the rails. So just slow this way up, and it's almost like a plyometric, and really begin to get your neurology feeling comfortable with feeling the board, letting the foot go left and right. Slow things up. If you're at all out of control, then how slow can you go? Go slower. Go absolutely slower until you can go perfectly at the slowest speed, and then you can speed things up. So being able to find the rails left and right with the same foot, so that same foot, that left foot is finding the left rail, it's finding the right rail. The right foot should be able to do the same thing. So this is all about learning ambi-pedal skill set so that both feet are acclimated to executing whatever it is that needs to be done. Either foot should be able to do all things. So slowly you begin to take a twin and begin to bring it up to the same skill set level as the other twin. So really keep that in mind. And there we drifted right over. Notice how much weight there was transferred to the walking leg as opposed to the skating leg. Whenever you come across some turbulence and you need to get over it, just put more weight on the walking leg and less weight on the skating leg and kick the board over. And here's a little how slow can you drill that we love to do, and that is just high leg rises and super slow Kubi cross with a 90-degree arm. So notice how that arm is staying at 90 degrees. That would be engaging the lat in the back and the core. And here we're going into what's called connector. This is a connector stroke. You can do these as drills as well. They're always from the back. Notice it's from the back and stand-up spike into a Kubi cross and stand-up spike into a Kubi cross. So now we're going to do this little climb up here where it summits out just a little bit. There's some high kick on how slow can you go. And so we're going less than a mile an hour, maybe 1 mile an hour or half a mile an hour. And we're executing the stroke super slow. And as you can see, the board, some of you have said, oh, the board goes so fast. No, the board does not go fast. You go fast. You make the board go fast. Ferraris don't crash themselves. people get in them and then they crash them. So the idea is to be able to drive the vehicle, whatever vehicle it is, within your control set, and do not accelerate it until you are in full control. And spikeboarding not being a radical and daredevil sport, there should be no fall downs whatsoever, folks. None at all. So if you're falling down, if you've ever fell down, rewind and examine why it is you fell. It's very rare that people will crash into you. You will crash on your own, and it will be a pilot error. So guys, really drill these how slow can you go drills over and over again. Here you notice that drop shoulder over that center line, and we're balancing the arm with the leg, and then we're slowing it way up and synchronizing it as well. So you want to be able to do this slowly, calmly, and within control, uphill as well as downhill. And these are on the ones, so you can begin to drift these and do them on the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, or the 5s. When you break momentum on the one stroke, this will be the most challenging. So when you can begin to do these on the one stroke cleanly, and you can begin to toss the spike over on the ones, you know you're going in the right direction. So also be focusing on that spike tip clearing the front of the board. You have to look at the spike tip every time and know that it's going to clear. You cannot add any power till you clear the front end of the board, and you know that that vector line's got a clean shot at new pavement behind it. Okay, so watch that spike tip and have it come around and then spike, and come around, spike. And your brain needs to say, it went around, you can spike. It went around, you can spike. Otherwise, you're very likely to spike your fender, your foot, or your board, and then have a little vacation off of the board, which is never something you want to do. So as you can see, this is switch drifting backwards. And there's a tiny little blip, and you handle it as you see by drifting and catching the board. So if you can do these on the ones, that's what you want to do. Focus on keeping your elbows high and keeping your elbows constantly bent. The idea is to engage the core and the lat, and as you can see, more weight was on the walking leg than on the skating gliding leg, and that went right over that big crack, no problem. Of course, you do need to slow down for these cracks a little bit, no problem. So now we're on this little round loop on this road, a little cul-de-sac. Try to find yourself some cul-de-sacs that have no traffic where you can practice, and as you can see, same board that you have, same spike that you have, and an emphasis and a focus on how slow can you go. And this little loop's going to have a tiny little descent where we're going to get some gliding on this other side, and that is how slow you should be able to go on your board. So if you just started or you're a beginner, you need to find pan flat pavement. I repeat, pan flat pavement, and stay away from hills if you want to begin to get a stroke this slow in stand-up spike. So we're picking up that square, and then we're spiking the square to the rear. Pick it up and spike it to the rear. And there you can see how well the skateboard spike works for bracing. So we're bracing to that backside, bracing to the front side. Always keep the skateboard spike in movement, and you'll always have a brace. The fact is that kubi crossing is far less challenging than a switch kick all by itself. If you're switch kicking on one side, you've got a leg to brace. If you head over to the other side, you've got nothing to brace you. So here's the stand-up spike stroke, nice and slow, and you can see us picking up our square and spiking our square. And what I mean is the formation of those arms. You're going to pick up the square and then spike it straight back. Pick it up and spike it straight back. See how high those elbows are going? Just picking up a square and engaging the core, bending at the waist, and keeping that skateboard spike vector line straight to the rear. And see how that leading shoulder and that leading hip are rotated around, so that the two shoulders should not be perpendicular to the board. They should be at a 45-degree angle. And here we're practicing our step overs and riding those rails nice and hard, left and right, keeping skateboard spike neutral with a little one-arm activation. So with a tiny little descent, you can also practice a little bit of carving. As you can see, the board will turn and it will make fairly tight radial turns, but you need to be on the rails, guys, okay? So if the board's not turning for you, you need to get on the rail. What I mean by on the rail is literally half of the sole of your shoe should be on the board and the other half will be off the board. That's how you can get it to turn. You should put those rails underneath. Right there, the feet are not on the rails, so if you needed to make a turn, a really sharp one, the board's not going to turn that well. Folks, now you really see how effective the skateboard spike is when you're 1/2. So this is one arm over 2 feet, otherwise known as SUS, 1/2. And it works incredibly well with one arm. So the skateboard spike works with one arm and with 2 arms, and that is what we do on land. We ski or we spike on land. One-armed action cannot happen in water. Many people confuse this sport with paddling. Find me a one-arm paddler, okay? Somebody send me a video with people paddling with one arm. That's called swimming, and it can't be done with a paddle. So you put a paddle on your hand, and you can swim with it, but that's about it. So folks, the vector line goes to the rear, and that is witnessed by the fact that you're doing it with one arm. So here we continue with the stand-up spike stroke on both sides. We'll come around on the other side, no problem, and you see how slow can you go. So just spend some time, get in a meditative state of going slow. Don't accelerate the board. Make it go slow. You can make it do what it is you want it to do, and that's exemplified in this video. If this athlete can do it, you can do it. Here's a little one arm with a nice high elbow, and notice how the arm is not extending out. Driving in that core power, driving in the lat. A little bit of a toss, and back and forth, and back and forth. Clears the front of the deck, and back it goes. Unthread it, thread it back in. Unthread it, thread it back in. Step over at the same time. So if you're a beginner, probably need to toss it and then step over. And sooner or later, you'll start syncing it up. Also, practice these little baby momentum strokes. And the high toss is also something that you should practice. So depending on the terrain, from time to time, you're going to need the high toss. So the high toss always goes silicone to silicone. There's a little more mid-level, and you're tossing it silicone to silicone. You're never catching it on the carbon fiber during the stroke and propulsion. So here's the skateboard toss over with the step over in conjunction, and you should be able to do these nice and slow. Again, start on grass. All this stuff, if it's too much for you, start it on grass, people. Just put the board on the grass, and if you can't balance on the board, flip it over and start on the underside, and just slowly but surely this neurology will begin to kick in for you, and with enough time you'll be doing this sport slowly. Just find a place with absolutely no cars. This is where we're doing it, on a tiny little road that's virtually empty, but you may want to find just a quiet parking lot or a school playground where there are no people, and keeping yourself safe as well as others. There we're driving with the arm. There's a good view on that 90 degree and also on the parallel nature of that skateboard spike. Extremely parallel to the board. And we're driving with that 90 degree arm from the lat and the core, and you can also see that leading shoulder is driving. Now when you stand up spike with one arm, you can actually spike on either side with or without a leading shoulder on your front side. It's no problem. It's when we stand up spike that there's absolutely no backside. So one arm actually doesn't really have a backside so much, and I don't know if we showed it, we may not have. And here are some step overs with a neutral carry. So you really want to practice this quite a bit, and also some hops are going to help quite a bit as well. And if you slow up too much, just give yourself a little bit of tiny little strokes, and practice these with your step over. The little step overs, you slide that foot back and plop the other one forward. Slide it back, slide it forward, slide it back, slide it forward. And also practice your hops. First start on the underside of the board and then practice on grass, and then slowly get it going so that you can do it on pavement. So guys, your hop over, you need a hop over because when things get really crazy and you need to come back to a dominant stance at any speed, you should be able to do a hop over. So begin to practice that from the very beginning, get comfortable to it, and begin to enjoy it. So here we come up and then start doing some 1/1s. As you can see, that's one arm over one leg, and slowly drop that shoulder and keep that weight over that center line. A little car back, and we're coming around this turn and continuing with the one arm work and 1/1. So drop that shoulder, keep that arm at 90 degrees, and always lean towards the skateboard spike. It's going to brace you and provide power. And also do these tiny little baby steps where you're sinking. Really emphasize the sinking. You can skip either one and alternate. You can skip spike, skip leg, and then connect the two. And there we are balancing in between. This really shows very well the bracing nature of your leg and a spike. It's kind of nice to have a spike on one side and have a leg on the other. So it's a very unique way to be on a board. If you only had a leg, you can go straight over the other side. Also, of course, God gave you core, God gave you lats, God gave you arms if you're so inclined to use them. This sport is sensational for it. And the 1/1 drills are going to help quite a bit. So this takes time. 1/1 is a little more advanced, and when I learned 1/1, I did not do these drills. They did not exist at the time. Also overemphasize the bracing. Really get comfortable to brace. So really use the skateboard spike as a brace and practice bracing extreme, as you just saw, way over to the left side. And these baby strokes also, and these momentum strokes are very good. Also practice your sliding on your skateboard spike. Slide from your neutral to your silicone and combine that also with skateboard spike toss over. So there you saw some sliding on the neutral to the silicone, neutral to silicone, neutral to silicone, while the skateboard spike is parallel to the board. So you can see upper body and lower body have quite a few variety of combinations that can be done, and none of them will be able to be executed at speed unless you really practice and believe in how slow can you go drills and do them over and over and over again, people. I can't overemphasize to you how slow can you go. So spike hard, spike often, spike boarding.
So soy, become the motor. Pro-designed ink wrist guards, always wear them. Blizz Eyewear, design, flexibility, and value.